This is part 3 of Peaceful Education, the Blue Mountain School Way.
And I have two daughters that were a part of it, and the older daughter, she decided to go on to public school. She goes in there at 7th grade. She was okay. The 7th grade in Floyd is the older class of the elementary school. There is no middle school. And she adjusted to that. She goes to 8th grade, and as you can imagine, 8th grade in high school is like bottom of the ladder, bottom of everything. She could feel the oppression of everybody above her, and she said, "No, I'm not doing this." So she stayed home for 8th grade, basically read romance novels and self-taught herself. And she goes back in 9th grade. It took her 1 month to catch up. And so that tells you how much you actually learn in 8th grade. In high school, and then she did fine. And many of her, we have a really high percentage of graduates of Blue Mountain School that become valedictorians, salutatorians.
50%
Yeah.
of the years we were either one of them.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that we only have 3 kids per about 150 kids for this to have happened.
And they did really well.
They will either be number 1 or number 2 50% of the time.
But I'll tell you, my other daughter, who then went through, and then she decided not to because of her sister's experience. Now I'm not going to high school. And she's somewhat dyslexic, but we didn't even know what that meant at the time. But we were starting to get, and she decides, oh, I'm just going to, she goes to an online school called Citizens High School, does it all by paper in front of herself. Correspondence course. And what's really interesting is that she ends up being a teacher. And she ended up going to VCU for a while, and then got really into it, went to Richmond. She goes out to Hawaii for graduate school, and she ended up teaching in Alaska. And what she learned from teaching herself, but also being in that environment that we created at Blue Mountain School, was how to get the kids to really enjoy each other and enjoy learning. And that was the primary focus that we were working on. And it's made her an incredibly successful teacher, but it was just kind of blew my mind that she who didn't like anything to do with school really becomes a teacher. Yeah. So again, it shows how you never know.
Right.
One of the other really interesting things, I've talked with a lot of parents about this, one of the things that often gets kids to a school like this is the fact that they fight every day about going to school. No kid tries not to go to school. Not one kid there hates it.
Right.
Not one kid.
And this is my research interest. Like, I was a public school teacher for 6 years, and I was bothered by a lot of the stuff that you all are describing with the SOLs and things like that. And so I started to seek out these schools that were very different. And I went and did my dissertation on a school that's called a free school, which is very different from the Blue Mountain School. Like, it takes Blue Mountain's ideas almost to the extreme, where there are no classrooms. The kids kind of go and do what they wanted. They have total freedom
No
to
curriculum.
Right, no formal, each child has his or her own curriculum, so there's nothing written up that says this will happen in 1st grade, this will happen in 2nd grade, or whatever. And, what I find with those kids who've been through it is that they do have these incredible things that they've learned that are able to transfer into the real world, so to speak. And that's the question that I constantly get, is very similar to what you asked, is how does the transition happen? And so the research actually bears it out. There are people out there who are studying these very different schools and asking this question of, do kids who go to schools like this end up homeless and in the gutter, because they haven't had this very conventional schooling? And the answer is, in fact, they're very successful, but they also have their own definition of success, is happiness, satisfaction with your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to monetary, although it can be in some senses, but these are kids who are, they have learned that their voice matters. And not only does this make them, productive citizens in terms of vocation and job and stuff like that, but it also makes them, think about it, we live in a democracy. And a democracy is all about, supposedly, having a voice, making choices that are informed and intelligent. And, here we have kids who've had many years of experience with that kids in public school, if they don't have a whole lot of voice and choice, they come out of it being used to being told what to do. And that's kind of dangerous for a democracy. We don't want that, ideally, but it's what happens. And so that's why people are so easily swayed by campaign advertisements and, sound bites and things like that. It's because they haven't had the opportunity to really kind of get in there and get into the meat of things And that's another piece of the peace, PEAC puzzle, is that, you know, if my dignity and autonomy is honored, then I'm going to be more inclined to value others. Because if I've been respected, I will tend to in turn respect others. And that's, you know, we want those sort of peaceful interactions with kids, and oftentimes that's not happening in our conventional schools.
I have a short
Please.
little example about
Okay.
my daughter, and I think it was a couple years ago, and she was having some conflict with some girls in her class, which is very common. Not really conflicts, but just, you know, they form cliques when they're like, you know, 6 to 9, 10, and she felt like she was being excluded a little bit. And she'd come home, she's like, you know, I just feel like I'm being excluded. You know, they're talking, they're not including me. And so we had a talk, and I was like, you know, there are other people in your class, Satya. Like, what about this person and this person? And I asked her questions like, well, you know, what kind of qualities does this person have? And she named them. Well, she's really imaginative. And I'm like, exactly. Why don't you try her out? And what about this student? You know, what kind of qualities do you see are positive in that person? And she named them. And after a while, she just opened herself up because of certain activities at school and because of conversations at home. And she just totally opened herself up to being around new kids. And that's hard at that age. And so that's kind of the culture that we're trying to create is, yes, conflicts come up, but, you know, you don't have to stay in a clique. I think we all, to some degree, kind of have a clique, and it's just really cool to be able to be, like, open to new people. And we try to encourage that. So.
Yeah, I can remember when new kids would come to school when I was in school, and nobody would talk to them for a month, I mean, at all. They would just sit by themselves, and they would be out on the playground by themselves. But when a new kid comes to this school, everybody goes up and talks to them and invites them to eat lunch with them. Or I know one parent came and said, your daughter said some really nice things to my daughter. We were stunned. We've never had that happen. We move a lot.
It's the
So
culture. It's
yeah.
just, it feels better to all kind of be friends.
And part of, you know, asking kids to have a voice and choice in what they're doing in school, you really have to know, what are you interested in? So teachers take the time to find out, you know, what are kids' interests, and how can I incorporate that into, you know, this content that I'm, you know, planning on teaching them? How can I get, you know, build off of their interests and incorporate it somehow? And thus kids become very known. You know, I can remember, I mean, it was so funny when you all, I guess the two of you in purple and red came in, oh yeah, we're in the same class together. You know, I mean, there's so many times when I put my classes into small groups and I say, do you know each other's names? You know, have you introduced yourselves? I mean, people often feel anonymous in many of the schools, more so the bigger ones than the ones that have 200 kids or something. Was it 200 in your graduating class or 200 in the whole school?
It's 200 8th grade through 12th grade.
Wow.
I had,
That's
we
tiny.
had 36 in my graduating class. And like the thing about the new students too, my senior year we had a boy come to public school for the very first time, and he used to live in Alaska. And we were like all like, I think it was John Paul actually. And so like we were all like, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. Like you literally talked to everyone. Like
Yeah.
I could name you everyone in my graduating class pretty much all the way down to 9th grade. I don't know the 8th graders because
They're the
in
8th
grade.
graders.
But I can pretty much tell you everyone's like probably almost who their parents are, what are they like, what sports do they play. And I know all that. And then like our elementary school is actually right next to our high school, and that's got even less kids in it actually. So like I can't tell you who and all is in the elementary school, but like
Oh, come on. No.
part of our like high school curriculum was to go to the elementary school and to do things with them. Like I had to go and teach kindergarten Spanish for like grades, and so it was like a lot of going back and
Interaction,
forth
yeah.
there, but that make us work with other people that are like.
So you
younger.
become known by the kids at the elementary, you're known by your classmates, you're known by your teachers because of that small size, which somebody had mentioned when we said, when you think of private school, what do you think of small size? I mean, that is, you know, when you think about a lot of the leaders in our country who are sending their kids to private school, a big part of it is small class size, because they know that they get the individualized attention and they get known, and so their interests get incorporated into the lesson plans. And that is so is part of saying to the kids again, we value you. You are not just an object who's sitting in a seat. You are a valued person, and we're gonna do something about that and include you and not make you feel like an object. You
And
are
they're
a
enjoying
person.
their learning.
Yeah.
They're saying, I'm really interested in this. Can you imagine that? You know, really enjoying learning.
I noticed on Facebook.
Quite a concept, huh? It's like, oh yeah.
I have 80 friends from high school. I have 2 from college.
Oh.
You know, on Facebook. That's how same college that I did, and I didn't know it until after we graduated.
Yeah. So, okay, I was going to ask Jane to talk about why did the school even come about in the first place, but we'll wait for her to come back. But while we're waiting, do you all have questions so far about the school? And can somebody give me a time check? What time is it?
5:40.
40.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're good on
I
time.
have a question.
Okay.
The expense?
So thank you, because somebody said earlier it's expensive and we all kind of laughed. So a typical private school probably will cost you anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a year. Our school is $4,860 for the school year. Now we do have a shortened week. We have school Monday through Thursday as opposed to Monday through Friday. And again, that's part of this whole seeking for balance. We have a society that is totally overworked and totally focused on staying busy all the time, whereas we're saying, again, with the contemplative piece, we're going to slow down and we're going to savor moments. And we're going to savor Oreos. It's making me hungry now.
We
But,
chose the school so we could spend more time with our daughter.
right, exactly.
Family time.
Yeah, more family time. There's so many people who have to get like special permission for their kid to go on a vacation with them that might be really incredibly educational.
Oh, another little thing. There's like my friend. She goes to UVA. Her little sister. They went on like a 2-week vacation, but it was like I don't know. When they're vacations, it's always like a learning experience. Now I go on vacation with them once. We would go like historical places, stuff like that. And then the next year, this year, she gets like a notice in the mail. It was like if Hannah misses any more, like, stuff like that. Truancy. Like this little girl is like the smartest little girl in this class. So it was like she questions the teachers and the teachers don't like her. That's why she goes on stuff. But I don't know.
But it's those experiences that enrich her.
Yeah, but
And-
it's
yeah.
crazy that I'm just like she's with her parents.
It
And,
is
like,
crazy.
They sign
It is
like you know what I
crazy.
mean. I'm like that's their child. Like
Yeah.
how can you tell them I can't go
Right.
on vacation?
Right.
You know, when I hear it, this child loses one more
I don't
day
get it.
despite having the highest grades in the class and having the highest achievement test, we will flunk them. What kind of sense does that make? It's not going to happen in the real world. I can tell you, if you're in a big corporation, you're outperforming everyone else, they'll let you do whatever the hell you want because they don't want to lose the high performers.
The only problem that comes with having a tuition that low, though, is that we are always in a state of, we need money to help us out because, we're in a very rural community, small community, has a relative to the rest of the state high unemployment rate and poverty rate and things like that. So we have to offer a lot of scholarships, which means that we have to find money somehow. So if we will pass the hat now, I'm just kidding.
It's our biggest
There's
problem.
only 14,000 people in the
Yeah.
entire county,
Yeah.
and that's not just the town, that's the whole
Right.
county. It's one of the larger counties in Virginia.
So that price limits us in many ways to expand and to really, improve our facilities and things like that.
The average income of a family of 4 is 32,000,
In
I
Floyd?
think, in
Wow,
Floyd.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really low.
As compared to Fairfax or Loudoun County or something. You had a follow-up?
Yeah, another question was, can other families in different counties send their
Yes.
kids there even though they don't live in Floyd?
Yeah, absolutely. It would just be a matter of transportation.
I was in Blacksburg when my daughter started going there. We were driving her from Blacksburg, but it was an hour to drop her off. Then we'd go home, and it was an hour. And my wife would drop her off. I'd pick her up. So it was 4 hours that we were losing every day. So we
That's a
actually
commitment.
we bought property in Floyd and built a house to move there, so we wouldn't keep doing this driving.
But yeah, for a private school, you can have anybody. Even if there was somebody, if you lived in Blacksburg and you wanted to house your kid at somebody else's house, which would kind of defeat the purpose of spending time with your kid. But yeah, a private school, if we have the capacity, we will accept. Yeah.
It's not
So,
location-based.
So I wanted to ask Jane about, the school started in 1981. In 2009 is when the school really sort of defined itself as this contemplative progressive school. But so we have this kind of 20-some year period where the school was a parent cooperative as opposed to having a principal. It was really, the parents ran the school, answered the phones and did all the files and, did this, that, and the other thing. So I wonder if you could speak to like what prompted this group of parents to get together to create this different place, and also to kind of talk about how the school was different from how it is that we've described it now.
Well, you're going to get a history lesson. Because really,